Hi everyone, my name is Josh Gallagher. I'm MediaCom APAC's Chief Product Officer, and welcome to Loop Live. For those of you joining for the first time, and a reminder for those who join every week or every other week, Loop Live is our content series that gives a look at some of the biggest problems that are happening from a media and marketing perspective. And what we bring to you is some thought leadership and some of the insiders who are on the ground every day, whether that's in agency side or clients, to be able to bring you some insight into how to solve those problems. One of the things that we've been doing over the past 6 to 12 months on Loop Live is talking about some of the things that have changed. And one of the occurring topics is how people shop. Specifically, we've spoken a lot about e-commerce. But one of the other things that has changed over the last 6 to 12 months and even longer is not just e-commerce and the digitization of retail, but it's also with people still in lockdowns, with people still in their local communities, is people shopping locally and people using shopping as a way to still remain connected with communities, to still remain connected with the people that live around them. And it's become really important. We speak to the people in the Philippines and going to the grocery market or the supermarket has become an event. Being able to go in physical places has actually become a topic of conversation and a thing to do. So there's been a big shift in retail, and it hasn't just been online, but it's been that mix of online shopping, but physical shopping as well. And today I'm going to welcome a couple of guests where we're going to talk about omni-channel retailing. We're going to talk about that mix between the physical retail, but also online retail. And I'm going to start off by welcoming Averill from our office in India, where this is more pronounced than probably anywhere in the world, to give us a little bit of insight. And then she's going to bring on a special guest to have a discussion about it. Over to you, Averill.
Thank you, Josh, and good afternoon, everyone, from a rainy day here in Gurgaon, India. Today's topic is a knowledge-sharing session on omnichannel marketing, with a few practical tips from one of our ace client marketers who's lived the omnichannel journey. However, before we hear from him, let's have a brief look at why omnichannel has become such a buzzword. What's the hype all about? And how easy or difficult is it to pull off from a marketing perspective? Now, this term has been around for the last 10 years, but it's only lately that organizations and technologies have begun to catch up. Think of it from a consumer perspective. When everything's become smarter, from how we book a taxi to how we listen to music, why can't we expect a better shopping experience too? And that's exactly what data tells us, that globally consumers are expecting to be able to shop while multitasking, whether at home or driving back from work, on their own terms and in a way that betters their experience. One can argue that online portals do offer all this and a superior experience. But that's why shopping is called an experience and not merely a transaction. We are not willing to give up on our physical connections. And this holds true for even the most digitally evolved economies in the world. Chinese shoppers, for instance, overwhelmingly prefer to have both channels as options. And even during peak COVID lockdown, online alone sales in the US and UK didn't exceed 35%. Closer here in India, we've grown to be comfortable with a unique mix of the new and the old. Take book sales, for instance. While Amazon and Flipkart dominate about 50% of the market, you have stores like the 200-year-old Higginbotham's in Chennai that has withstood the onslaught of online sales. Lately, a bookstore in Kolkata saw massive queues due to its heavy discounting. In fact, if we look at the overall market construct, we see that there are multiple retail channels here in India, each of them adding to their own set of value. From the overall retail sales, about 75 to 80% comes from mom and pop stores, which are rapidly digitizing with WhatsApp delivery and online wallet payments. Then the next 10 to 15% comes from large format supermarkets, promising a sophisticated shopping experience. And finally, about 5 to 6% from e-retail, which while large in some segments like fashion and electronics, is yet to break into the largest of them all, which is grocery retail. Where this goes from here will depend on a few factors. There's a Nielsen report which has explored the psychology behind omni-channel shoppers. And it suggests that whether a shopper is a bargain hunter, a novelty seeker, or someone who values customer service highly, omni-channel does seem to be his or her preference. There is an intuitive pull for being able to transact seamlessly with a retail brand across formats and touchpoints, and thereby getting more personalized service. But what about the organization side? Is it for everyone? And how easy or hard is it to set up? We've seen that the consumer is ready, but there are parts to this that we need to consider more deeply. The first and biggest is how do we even shift from marketing for the highest number of total transactions to now chasing that customer across multiple platforms? This requires the highest level of consistency of information and experience for customers, as well as for different touchpoints to be able to talk to each other. The second and important one is who owns this journey in the marketing team. We talked today about bringing brand and demand together, but we know practically that much of this still sits in different silos. And last but not the least, for us as a fraternity, is what impact would omnichannel have on how we plan marketing communications and media planning? Is it going to get more personal and hyperlocal, or is good old brand building still needed? These are tough questions, but fortunately, we don't have to answer them alone. Today, we have the privilege to be joined by the Group CMO of Future Group, often referred to as the Walmart of India, and one of India's foremost practitioners of omnichannel marketing to help us understand this better. He's been there and done that and through COVID times, so learnings from him would be invaluable. Welcome, Pawan, and so glad to have you with us. Your thoughts on
Thank
the
you.
overall omni-channel space and the future group journey so far. Over to you, Pawan.
Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me in this forum. I think I'm extremely delighted to share, some of our learnings here, and I hope that it's useful to everyone who's listening to us at this point in time. Yes, I think just from a physical retail point of view, it's been a very, very challenging year, but nevertheless, hugely learning as well. If you ask me, I think the biggest learning, which has always been there, right? Customer is the king, and customer decides that finally how you are supposed to operate, right? So I think what we saw in last 1 year is that you need to deliver where the customer is, right? Whether he wants it at home or wants to come to the store, you have to leave this decision. This could be any circumstances, right? I mean, this was obviously lockdown was a big trigger point, but finally, I think it's the customer who will decide, right? How are you going to operate? I think this was a big shift which happened to us. Omni-channel, which was, I always say this, that pre-COVID, it was a boardroom discussion, got into a reality. It hit us so hard that we literally had to fix it within like 15 days. And when I say this, I mean it, right? Uh, but we are very well aware of the fact that, in India, I think shopping in a physical format is a part of social fabric, right? Unlike the West countries where you have, many avenues to socialize, right? You have parks and you have many things as infrastructure. I think in India it's limited, right? So therefore, I think the biggest pastime which consumers have it over a weekend. If I have to say, let's go to a mall, let's go to a market. Typically in India, people say, "Chalo marketing karne chalte hain." I'm just using the Hindi line, but that's how people address it. To tell you the fact that in smaller towns in India, right? If you go and check some of our stores, people come dressed up like as if they are going for some occasion. I think that's how special it is. So physical retail will always have a larger role to play. Is the point which I'm making? It's really not about just shopping. It's really not just about a chore which I think a family is doing. It's also about a socializing with family, friends. It's more than that. But of course, when lockdown hit us, we realized that this is something where we need to reach out to our customers, and that's a big shift which we did. The omni-channel strategy came to reality for us, and I think it's been very useful. I mean, if you ask me, right? One of the biggest use case which I have seen from an omni-channel point of view is frequency. In a physical retail, a customer could maybe come at like 1.5 times a month, but that's led to around 4 times. And I think that's the biggest win for us, if you ask me. Because while you do your monthly shopping during the beginning of the month as you get your salary, but there are top-ups which a customer does it on a weekly basis. Because of the online and the omni-channel strategy, the top up is also coming to us. So that way I think it's been completely blessing for us, and we've not been we've been extremely serious about delivering this promise to the customer. In fact, just coming from the whole top up and how quickly a customer needs it, we have actually laid out a 2-hour delivery promise, and therefore we want to ensure that the customer, whatever one orders, should be delivered within 2 hours, right? I mean that's what we've been doing. It's been 6 months. It's been a great ride for us, and yeah, that's been our journey till now.
That's wonderful, Pawan. And I can so relate to shopping being an experience here in India. That's
Right.
precisely what you see when you walk through malls and you see a whole family really coming together, the grandparents, the grandchildren, and everybody there. But what I'd love to hear from you,
Absolutely.
Pawan, is, how easy or difficult was it to really get people to start using, their digital devices to start doing this? Because your customers are the kinds, like you said, who like the touch and feel, who come to the store, who have the experience. So how did you, in the sense, invite them, and how did you onboard them into some of your digital channels?
I think it's a great question. Firstly, we've been serving our customer for almost 20 years, so we have extremely rich data. Almost goes to the extent of almost like a 60 million data which we carry of our customer over the years and across the formats, right? So I think the first party data has been extremely useful for us to reach out to them and tell them that if you need anything, just download the app or go to our website and start shopping immediately. I think that was the I think that data played a huge role in our case, to sort of channelize it and really get into motion or action immediately, as we got our omni-channel act in place. So the starting point was easy. I mean, I'll be very honest with you, because during lockdown, if you remember, I think there was a huge demand. I think the supply was limited, so we got a huge benefit. So our starting point kind of was kind of in a way it was easier, right? I mean, to get people onboarded and get them to shop, because the demand was maybe 10 times more than the supply, right? I mean, and therefore I think the timing was right for us. But we are very careful of the fact that this opportunity just cannot be left when the lockdown is over, and then and the customers are going back to what they were doing earlier. So we ensured that we went back and spoke to the customer, and we realized that what are the pain points which we can address, as a physical retail, what we can do. I think there are two things which the customer told us. Number one is that I'm used to shopping in a store. Can I see the inventory of that particular store? Right? I mean, don't show me something global, because I think what in India, the organized retail also brings in a lot of localization. I mean, if you're familiar with India, and I mean, like what happens in Malleshwaram, Bangalore to a Lower Parel, Bombay is extremely different from the kind of merchandising you are supposed to keep. So I think that was the starting point which we heard from our customer, that as long as you are able to give me whatever I'm used to buying from a particular store, we are absolutely okay to even create top-ups or even shop online. I think that's the first thing which we did. And that also kind of led to a very huge advantage for us, because suddenly we realized that we don't have like 5-6 warehouses in the country. We have almost 300 warehouses, because every store literally became a warehouse for us. And I think the task in hand was that how do we showcase that inventory to the customer who's used to shopping in a particular store and particular kind of inventory, right? That I think that's the first thing which we addressed. The second thing was, no matter whether it's lockdown or not lockdown or any time of the hour, I think grocery is something which, if you need it now. It's not something, it should come to you the next day, right? It just loses its relevance. I also feel that in India, as you rightly mentioned in your introduction, that grocery play is just happening right now. I mean, online e-commerce has been there for 10 years, but I don't think grocery was ever as big as it should have been, right? Because of like the customer wants it now. That's exactly where also we led to our advantage. And we said that, listen, we have 300 touch points. Why can't we make things accessible to our customer within 2 hours, right? I think these were the two things we heard from the customer. We implemented it. And believe me, that's exactly, we're so delighted to share that, listen, our frequencies increased to 4 to 5 times. I mean, it can't get better. That's how I think online and offline is actually complementing each other, right? Rather than being competitive. I think a lot of the organization, just online and offline being competitive, like one of the bigger daddy kills the other. But in our case, it's actually complementing. And I think that's how we've been able to grow. And our numbers haven't gone down at all ever since the lockdown sort of, we started during the lockdown.
Yeah. That's wonderful, Pawan. And I would also say, it also says somewhere that fortune favors the brave. I think you had built a brand by the time lockdown happened. I mean, who hasn't heard of the legacy of Future Group? And you had the data sets ready. So, in a sense, while the
Absolutely.
opportunity did come from an external perspective, I think you were very well placed to be able to take advantage of it, which is what smart marketing is all about. Because if you had to set up systems at that point, you would have just lost that very valuable couple of months where consumer behavior was being shaped. So I think that's fantastic. I also remember, Pawan, reading about some of the innovations that Future Group brought in. Like you mentioned, the 2-hour delivery. I think there was a lot of use of channels like WhatsApp, etc. If you could elaborate a little on that, what were the different touch points that really got people started? And again, it was about touch points that they were familiar with and they were anyway using, rather than really something very new and different for them.
No, I think it's a great question you've asked me. Again, let's go and look back the fabric of India. If you look at how we operate and how our consumers are online, as you mentioned, that grocery is just about 5%, right? I think there is a scope of almost growing by 95% if I just see the opportunity, right? But that shopping cannot just be restricted to app alone or a website alone, right? We also have to see like what and how consumers are very familiar. So we realized two things, that I think WhatsApp is something which consumers are extremely familiar with, but they may not be able to navigate in the online platform as easily because it's an extremely search-led platform, right? Therefore, typing and looking for it. So what we told our customers that why don't you create a list, as you do it, every month, just take a photo and send it to us. It was a very, very simple idea, which kind of got into literally creating that convenience for the customer. And there's a large part of our orders actually came through a very, very simple. I won't even call it innovation. I will just call it like logic. It was as simple as that. And we also realized that a lot of people are used to calling, right? And we also said, okay, give us a missed call and we'll be able to take your order and place it. So it's always going back and understanding how comfortable your customers are, what they need, and we always stand up to that occasion. And these are two ideas actually came from customer interaction itself.
But this is absolutely, I think frictionless marketing is the jargon that it's called, but it's where you do what's anyway natural to a consumer and how they shop. We all make our lists on notepads and things like that. So I
Yes.
think you just extended it and took it forward on digital channels, which is great. Pawan, how do you see it moving from here? Because now lockdowns are over. Now we're in overdrive when it comes to vaccinations. At least here in India, a lot of people will again want to start going out and shopping. So, what happens then to all these systems that you've set up, and how do you see the two working in tandem moving ahead?
So, this is part and parcel of our ecosystem now. I mean, I think online is really well built and become a part of our culture. In fact, I don't know if you've been noticing, we are actually doing a huge campaign on our online business, as of now. The reason is we want customer to see us one. And what we are trying to tell customer is that, whether you want a trouser or a pack of rice, right, we'll deliver it to you in 2 hours. It doesn't matter whichever category it may be. I think that's the larger promise which we are delivering. As I said, that as long as the customer is seeing and shopping within the store and from the store, this is here to stay. I mean, there's no question. I mean, I don't know why am I answering it even like that. It's a part of us, and it's a very, very strong part. Of course, what it does is, as I said, the frequency is the biggest thing which is done to us from a customer point of view, and therefore that level of business growth as well, where it comes from. I mean, as long as we are able to keep our customer. Earlier, as I said, the customer would come only 1.5 times, because physical store will always have that level of constraint, right? But today, I think we have been able to engage with him 4 times a month. I think that's the biggest victory for us, if you ask me. Of course, the final call is with the customer. We will want him to be with us, whether want to order at 2 in the midnight and need something, or like going to the store over a weekend and socializing with friends and family. We leave that to our customers. That's completely their preference. But this is very, very, very much part of our ecosystem now.
Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic, because the journey has moved from, taking an opportunity to really then embedding it and making it a part of culture. In fact, while visiting a store, I remember that, there is the salesman who's also standing there to help you download the app as you walk out from the store, and really talk to you about, how you can use it for your next purchase. So I think that's the level of integration that you have been able to manage, which is really what, what drives the habit change. So I think fantastic. And Pawan, I think we have a few questions from the audience. So I'll just ask Josh to come in to share them with us. Yeah.
There is a few questions in there. I'm going to be selfish actually and ask a question myself, because I'm quite interested in your experience and how we can apply that outside of India itself, because knowing the scale of Future Group and the complexity that lies within that, I'm really interested, particularly around how organizationally you set up internally to make these changes. I think the way that you talk, it sounds very easy just to listen to customers and then implement change from boardroom to reality. But perhaps it's not that easy, and it does mean a lot of changes to structures. I know a lot of other clients we have media departments, marketing departments, and merchandising, all in separate areas, not really kind of talking to each other. So I suppose your advice on how it works operationally, what kind of advice can you give to marketers and even agency people on how to bring all of those things together so you can deliver everything in 2 hours?
Yeah, Josh, it's a very, very important question which you have asked. I mentioned one of the thing about saying that, the moment within our organization, if there are 2 organizations, one is working for offline and one is working for online, the bigger daddy will always kill the smaller one. Right. What happened in our case was we integrated. The store inventory went on live for the customer. It was a win-win for the customer, because the customer is used to shopping in a certain way and certain merchandising. It also became a win for the store, because any top line which is happening from online actually went to the store. The moment you are able to fix this, believe me, then you will never have any operational challenge. Believe me, I mean, I don't want to give a very operational answer. I'm just giving a very, very top level answer to fix some of these things. Because imagine if a store is doing, let's say a million of business a day, right? Even if 15-20% comes online, that's a growth for that store. And that's how they embraced it, right? And then all the operational matrix is being fixed by them, and then the store figures out everything, right? We don't even need to do much. Obviously there was a delivery partner which we got into play, and obviously it kind of, when we made to our promise, initially there were glitches, but we ensured that we figured out what are the low hanging things which we need to fix. We fixed it, and obviously what happens is when the storm is sort of hitting you, if you are able to put your house in order at that point in time, I think everything becomes smooth. I think lockdown was a storm when it came to number of orders and what was happening. So then it just helped us to fix everything at that point in time, and we were able to fix it today.
Great, that's really interesting. There's a couple of questions that have come in around, and I think for me it's a question as well that I think can help a lot of marketers around how it works when you have a scaled organization or you're very small. And I think a lot of the questions are coming in are around, did you have a different approach versus, some of the bigger city centers versus rural areas in India? And for me, in the same respect for the broader APAC audiences that we have, how does it work when you've got a bigger scale somewhere, or you're catering to a smaller kind of regional or rural area that might have a much smaller kind of parcel? Is it just every customer's the same, or have you adapted as you've gone along to different areas?
Great question once again, Josh. What happens is, if you look at e-retailer in India, right? I mean, e-retailing per se, I think it's very metro focused, right? I mean, top 20 cities and the online grocery business is over, right? I mean, largely, if you look at any of the big guys, most of them are focusing on the bigger cities, right? So what we did, because of our strength in the tier two town and tier two and tier three town, that really helped us. In fact, 60% of our business is actually coming from tier two and tier three. That's exactly where we saw sweet spot, right? Nobody was concentrating there. So that is become one very important market for us to deliver, because the need out there is equally as much as what's there in the metro, right? Because finally, as long as you are able to serve anything within 2 hours when it comes to your home and while you're cooking something, because finally we are a destination store. We are not like a like a neighborhood store. One needs to plan and come to our store, and typically that's why when they have to buy a monthly grocery, they come to our store. I think this kind of gave them a huge convenience to sort of call for anything, as they wanted it. Even if it's 4 items, five items, it just didn't matter to us. What really mattered is that you should think of us when you want to order anything. I think that was a more broader agenda which we were chasing. For us, I think the smaller markets kind of played a larger role in terms of creating that growth. So I think finally, while I can understand from the other e-retailers' point of view because of infrastructure and other things, how they need to focus and cost efficiencies and all of it. For us, I think that baseline, infrastructure was already there. It was actually playing upon that baseline infrastructure and ensuring that how you become part of their ordering or their convenience. I think it was more for us. It was more for that. But believe me, one thing, Josh, I can tell you is that in India, tier two towns and tier smaller towns are buzzing much more than what a metro would be doing here. That I can assure you.
That's fantastic. We're almost out of time. I'm not going to take up more of your time because I know you're a very busy man. And also now you've only got an hour and a half out of your 2 hours to get things delivered if people have ordered stuff now. But I think the one big takeaway from me, and I think it kind of came through loud and clear from both Averill and yourself, is just listen to the customer. Adapt, be willing to adapt, but ultimately listen to the people that are buying your products. And the people that are interacting with you every day, and you'll have the kind of success like Future Group have that's been able to kind of weather the storm throughout the ongoing COVID crisis. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Thank Averill. I'm going to thank everyone who's put in comments and questions in the comments box as well. We'll be sure that we'll get back to those. Maybe Averill will get back to you on some of those questions, because there are some really good questions being answered. But again, I'm going to thank you all for coming today. We will see you in the next few weeks with another Loop Live to discuss more about what's happening in media and marketing. But thank you once again to the guests that have joined us.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Averill. I think it was wonderful interacting with you guys. Some great questions. I loved interacting with you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Josh. Thank you.